Back when I was 12 years old, I had a nice little after-school paper route, delivering 23 of the Pittsburgh Press. I remember my very first day on a paper route. The paper boy before me left me a note of all the do's and don'ts for each one of those homes. As I'm going through the list, on one house, he had written down that I had to deliver the paper to the back of the house, walk up the steps, and put it on the porch, on the table on the porch. And then he had a note written right next to those directions, watch the dog. So I got to that house, and I walk into the back of the house. I'm kind of tiptoeing because I figured the dog's back there somewhere. I get to those steps, and I look at the steps, and on the top of the steps on the porch was this massive dog box, the biggest dog box I'd ever seen in my life. And right across the dog box was the word killer. And I thought to myself, now, why would someone name their dog Killer? That seems like a horrible name for a dog. So I'm going up the steps. I'm just about to the top, and this massive dog comes out of this massive dog box, and he starts to growl, and he leaps for me. Well, I turn around, and fortunately, he was tied to a 10-foot chain, and I could run 12 feet in a split second. But as I'm running away, I thought to myself, I understand now why that dog named it Killer, because potentially that's what he is. You see, I failed to interpret what was right in front of me. Now, that turns out to be the key point of today's gospel reading. Today's gospel comes out of the 17th chapter of Luke, verses 11 and 19. And often in life, we fail to realize and understand what we're looking at. So for those who are married here tonight, those who are the husband and a wife, sometimes your wife might be crying out because she needs you, and she might not be crying on her face, but she's crying in her heart and in her soul. And when you look at her, do you see that she's crying out for you? You might have a son or a daughter, if you're a parent, blessed to be so. And maybe your son or daughter is silently screaming out that they want to talk to you. But can you hear the silent plea that they need to talk? You see, what we're going to discover in today's gospel reading, there's a very important commodity. It's a sacred commodity that we all need in life, but only a few of us, only a few of you have. Let's take a look at verses 12 to 16 of the 17th chapter of Luke. Now we're going to travel through this, and we're going to double back. As he, Jesus, was traveling, as entering a village, 10 lepers met him. They stood at a distance from him and raised their voices, saying, Jesus, Master, have pity on us. And when he saw them, he said, go show yourself to the priest. As they were going, they were cleansed. And one of them, realizing he had been healed, returned glorifying God in a loud voice and fell at the feet of Jesus and thanked him. Now, those 5 verses are very powerful, and we want to go back and take a look at the top. As Jesus was entering the village, 10 lepers met him. And they stood at a distance from Jesus. You see, if you had leprosy, it was the flaking and scaling of the skin. It covered your entire skin. It was the largest organ in the body, which is your skin. From head to toe, you can see it. It was a flaking, scaling, and you left red marks over your entire body. And lepers had a tendency that when they were walking along and they could see someone approaching them, and if they wanted to talk to that person, they would stop. They would stand at a distance. Leprosy was highly contagious. And if they realized if they walked too close to someone and someone looks at them because it was visually recognizable, that person would turn around and run away. That's why they stood at a distance from Jesus. This is a code of conduct for lepers, not necessarily a sign of respect for Jesus. They wanted to talk to Jesus. They want to make sure that when Jesus sees us, we don't want him to run away, so we're going to stand at a distance. Now, once you do that, then in order for the person you're going to talk to, in this case Jesus, to hear you, they have to raise their voice. That's why they raised their voice and they said, Jesus, Master, have pity on us. Now I'm going to travel through the next section. We're going to try to determine, I'm going to ask you to look at it as I go through it, to see why only one of these lepers returned to give thanks to God. And when he saw them, he said, go show yourself to the priest. As they were going, they were cleansed. And one of them, realizing he had been healed, returned glorifying God in a loud voice. He fell at the feet of Jesus and thanked him. Now, why did only one of those 10 lepers give thanks to God? You see it there? It's written right there. It's one word. He realized it. You see, that's the key commodity, to realize. What you want to pray for in your life is, Heavenly Father, give me the ability to realize what's going on right in front of me. So I could see what's going on in my child and my son or daughter. I can see if they're silently screaming out. I can interpret. I can realize that something's wrong in their life. Help me realize if my husband or my wife, they're in trouble, they need me to talk to them. Allow me to realize that. You see, it's a sacred commodity to realize. To see what's going on right in front of you and understand what's going on right in front of you. Because when you don't see what's going on right in front of you, you make a mistake. When you can't interpret what's going on and that what you're looking at. You know, priests obviously aren't trained marriage counselors. But I have a lot of couples that come to my office, an inordinate amount of couples that come to my office and they talk. They're having marital problems. And I always tell them, look, I'm not a marriage counselor, but I can offer you spiritual counseling. You see, the human body and the human mind, we're extremely complex. We're physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental beings. And sometimes when the spiritual part of our lives is deficient, it has a way of corrupting the other three aspects of life. The physical, the mental, the emotional. So they come into my office and we're trying to figure out with them that what might be going on spiritually. What might they be lacking spiritually? And if we can ascertain that, maybe we can correct or begin to identify some of the other problems in their marriage. Now, usually what happens when they come to my office, and I always set the parameters. I always let them know right out of the gate, as we're sitting around a table, and I have one in my office. I always let them know that as we have our conversation, they need to be truthful and honest. If they're not going to speak the truth, and they're not going to be honest with each other myself, there's no reason even to get started. So truth and honesty is extremely important. It's always important in our life, truth and honesty, as you're dealing with your spouse. You're dealing with your children, they to you. But if you're coming to a priest to talk about your marital problems that might be predicated on a spiritual deficiency, clearly then, truth and honesty are extremely important, as they always are in life. So I tell them they have to be sincere and honest, truthful. Then I always tell them that when one is talking, the other one cannot interrupt. So allow the one person to talk their complete sentence, their complete thought, and then you could chime in afterward. But you must allow each person to speak their thought. Even if you don't like what they say, you'll have your turn. And they have always agreed to that. I never had a couple say, well, I didn't come here to be truthful and honest. I never had anyone say that. They're always willing to be truthful and honest. And I remember one day in particular when I had this couple come in, went over the parameters of truth and honesty, let the other person talk totally. And we began our conversation. And conversation, as often it does when you're meeting with a couple that's having marital problems, it starts off slow, very slow. You kind of have to break through the superficial to get down to the visceral. It takes a while to get deep into the earth to try to figure out what's going on spiritually. Now, in this one particular couple, we were talking for about near an hour, and I could tell we were starting to really drill down deep. It was beautiful. They really were starting to be honest and with each other, as they were from the beginning, but brutally honest. And then the wife looked at the husband, and she said this. She said to the husband, you know, when we dated and then when we married, and for many years in our marital life, you always asked me to pray with you. You'd come and get me, and you'd say, come and pray with me. And she's looking at her husband, and she said, not only have you always asked me to pray with you, but for many years in our marriage, you would come over and give me a pat on my shoulder, pat on my back, and a pat in, maybe I can't mention this one area, but the husband would give a pat on his wife, you know. And she said, I always enjoyed that. And sometimes out of the clear blue sky, as a surprise, you give me a kiss in the neck or a kiss on my cheek. Just a surprise kiss. And that always felt good. And she said, you always wrote me little love letters, little love notes. I see them you write a little love note and you put it on a milk refrigerator, you put a little love note, and I see it on the sink and on the vanity in our bathroom. And I enjoyed all that. And every time you did one of those kind of gracious acts, it always made my love for you grow. She said, I got to a point in my life that I never thought I could love anyone more than I loved you, past tense. She said, but lately, within the last couple of years, you stopped asking me to pray with you. For some reason, you stopped patting me on the shoulder, the back, somewhere else. You stopped giving me surprise kisses on the cheeks or on my neck. And you stopped writing the thing I really, really cherish. You stopped writing me these little love notes that I'd find all around the house. And she said, as you stopped those things, my love for you began to disintegrate. And spiritually, I don't feel like we're connected with each other. And that's why we're here in Father's office, because our marriage is just kind of crumbling. And my love for you has faded away. It isn't gone, but it's faded. And he looked at his wife, and he gave an answer that really comes right out of today's gospel reading. And he looked at his wife with these massive tears rolling out of his, just coming out of his eyes and going down his cheeks. And they were falling off the cheek and landing on the table. They were starting to puddle on the table itself. And he looked at his wife with incredible sincerity. And you know, in this gospel reading, only one leper returned to give thanks to God, 9 others did not, because one realized he had been healed. He looked and he saw and he understood. And this is what he said to his wife. He said, I didn't realize I stopped those things. It was that simple. He said, I didn't realize that I stopped asking you to pray with me. It just somehow gradually, I just stopped doing it. I didn't realize I did. I didn't realize that I stopped giving you pats. I didn't realize that I just stopped kissing you in the cheek or the neck. I didn't realize I just, for some reason, gradually stopped writing down these little thank you notes, these little love notes. I didn't realize that I stopped doing those things. It was that simple. And he's crying when he told her he didn't realize that. And she's crying as well. Because what they both realized, something neither one realized, is they should have sought help quicker. Or maybe sat down and talked to each other quicker. And say, look, this is what's going on. It's not that their love for each other just totally corroded and washed away. It was fading away because what they were doing and what he was doing for his wife that allowed their love to just amplify and grow together, he unintentionally stopped. And he never realized it. That's a powerful word. That's why that one leper returns to God. It's hard to believe the other 9 didn't realize it because leprosy was the flaking, scaling of the skin. It covered the entire body. They had to see it, but for some reason they were reading the sign, killer, on the dog box, and they didn't understand what that meant. They were looking at each other and didn't understand what that meant. They were looking at their own body. They didn't see it. They didn't realize it. To be able to realize what's going on in your life is a sacred commodity. Not everyone realizes what's going on. And for those who are husbands and wives, and for anyone here as a child, and you want your parents to listen as you silently scream to them, just Mom, Dad, sit down, I need to talk. And sometimes we do not respond to family members, not because we want to hurt them, not because we're angry, not because we don't want anything to do with them, but because we don't realize that they're crying inside. We don't see it on their face, and so we so hurried. We just walk on by, and we never realize. What you want to pray for if you haven't, what you want to pray for tonight for yourself, for any other family member, you know that that family's struggling. You got to say, Heavenly Father, give me the gift of realization. Help me to realize what's going on in my life, what's going on in my life of my family, the life of my friends. Help me to see what is right in front of me so I can interpret properly what I see and act accordingly to what I see. But none of that stuff can happen if you don't realize what's going on right in front of you. Heavenly Father, give all of us the gift of the sacred commodity of realization. Help us in our lives individually to see what's going on in our lives. To be able to see the cries of our husband or wife, or the silent pleas and screams of son or daughter. Because when we're moving too fast in this world, jump from one thing to the other, we're going to miss what those in our lives need. And that is just our time, our consideration, our ear, our love. Give us the gift of realization.